here. Okay, we call this meeting to order tonight, and seeing no one here for the public comment session, we'll go on to approval of the minutes. And we've all had time to look at those minutes, so do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
And any comments, corrections, edits? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. And that passes. Then we go to the vouchers, and we've also had an opportunity to look at those. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
And then second, okay. And any questions that any of our leadership team can answer?
These are coming up.
Okay. And hearing none, all in favor of approval of the vouchers, say aye.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. And then the monthly reports, do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
And Mr. Fay, will you go
Thank
over
you.
those for us?
Thank you so much. Madam Chairman, I always try to take the lead and take the wind out of Dudley's sails, but since we're in brackets this time, I'm just going to turn it right
I had
over
a feeling you were going to do that.
to Dudley. What happened, bud?
Can I just preface the statement as my understanding is the CFO reports the numbers? That's all, the operations people are the ones that,
That is correct.
Thank you for your help, bud.
you're welcome, Dudley.
That is correct. Thank you. Before you got the revenue and expense summary for the month of March, electric department had a $479,000 loss. The water and sewer had a $59,000 loss. It is a 3-month payroll, so we have that extra payroll in each department. If we look at the degree days, you can see again, the blue is this year. We are so far behind in the weather. And I apologize, but my crystal ball this year on the forecast was not good. And as you said for me, I only report the numbers. I don't make them happen. So if you look at our revenue less power cost, that is $700,000 less than last year, our margin. So what we sell to our customers and what we pay to TVA, we're already $700,000 in the hole. Then on top of that, you had the summer storm of $700,000. I mean, it just is what it is, and I can't fix that. And we're not going to meet budget this year, unfortunately. But as in all my years, my 41 plus years here, I never remember a year being so mild all year long, summer and winter. And we had those few cold days in the winter, which really killed us because of the demand charges that we've explained to you before, which killed the margin. So it's just been a tough year in the electric department. Water and sewer department, I mean, it's doing pretty well. It's staying close to the forecast. So, but our industrial sales are way down from what we anticipated. If you look at over here at where our water and sewer sales are at, they're both way less than what I expected to this point. The industry has made I got to believe they're making an effort for conservation. It's not about money with them, I don't think anymore. It's about conservation. I think it comes from the whole corporate mindset of we've got to conserve water, show that we are conserving water. That's why they're approaching Todd about going 100% green power, renewable power. That's the whole mindset of the whole world now. So they're cutting back on their usages, and it's impacting our water and sewer department as well. But thankfully, our expenses are down in the water and sewer department, and that's that $171,000 right there is because our expenses are lower than I expected. That's partially due to the fact that we're not selling as much, but it's a lot due to labor. Poor old Jones over here, he can't hire anybody hardly to work, and it's just been it's been a tough year, I'll say that. And I apologize, my crystal ball just didn't work this year. And that's all I got.
Crystal ball has been very accurate for the past many years, so it's just,
Thankfully.
you can't fight nature and all these storms, and it just
Thank
doesn't
you.
work sometimes. Yes, questions?
Yeah, a couple questions. So, what's one of our payroll costs roughly?
Electric department's about 200,000, the water and sewer's about 75,000.
Are those, so would the three actually hit the expense line, or was it accrued across the?
It hits.
Oh, it actually does hit, so it does actually, so so part of the 479 is 200 of.
Yeah.
Ish of payroll.
That's
So that's
correct.
good. I think the other part is there any impact on capital or right now that we're seeing, I mean,
No,
so it's not, I mean, it's obviously nothing, nobody wants to obviously go through, but I mean, we are, but we're strong balance sheet, strong reserves.
absolutely, but, and well, you're taking a little bit of my wind out, because in the other business I'm gonna talk about, right now, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into where we are now and the reasons for it. And I wrote some of these things down so I wouldn't forget. The labor shortage has made a difference, because with the low unemployment rate, we're losing folks because they're being taken from us. The average worker in the industry, according to the state, just for Anderson County, is $1,400 and some odd dollars a week, which is $70,000 a year. So the competition for that is scarce resources, supply and demand. As you know, this exceptionally high inflation has gotten us, all of our material costs have gone up significantly. Dudley's already mentioned the mild weather, which is both seasonal in the winter and the summer. We've never seen it, and we've been around a long time. We're going to lose the pandemic credit from TVA. That's the word on the street. And we unfortunately, the storms have devastated us. All of that to say, we're looking at a deep dive into rates as to whether or not there needs to be a rate adjustment. And we only have till June 30th with TVA to make that happen. So we've enlisted our rate consultant, which is Chris Mitchell, and we're all meeting with him. And I'm going to bring recommendations and some for action for the board at our next board meeting. And I'll give you a lot more backfill in order to explain if, and I believe it will, it's more than an if, it'll be why we think this is necessary, what we think is necessary, and the impact that it's going to have. Because we don't want to get behind the ball. We are in front of the ball right now.
Okay, other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of approving the monthly report, say aye. Aye. And that motion passes. And Mr. General Manager, the project status reports.
They are so easy, Madam Chairman. Everything is either on time or it's completed, and everything is working well. And I'll be glad to go, because we've talked about these before. I don't know. We can answer any questions that you might have, other than the fact that it's all on time, and if it's not already completed, it's anticipated to complete on schedule. And in the water department, that was electric. In the water department, the Lost Ridge tank that has now been drained is out of service. Is that right, Craig? Mm-hmm. And well, you can speak to that if you want to.
The Lost Ridge tank, we drained it for the contractor to mobilize in. They are mobilized now, and they're staging the equipment to start working on the interior of the tank itself right now. That's where we're at. So we are on schedule.
You know, I think it's also worth saying that we've got our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES permit. Greg has done that. This is the permit. I mean, it is a piece of work, and that's dated May the 8th, you know, that we just got that in. Greg has done a tremendous job in making this the smoothest permit, it lasts for 5 years. And all my years, we've never had such a smooth time without any new regulations, and many are now getting tagged with new regulations. No new regulations, 5 years, we're good to go, and I'm gonna give Greg Jones all the credit for that, because I had zero to do making this thing happen. So we
Thank you.
appreciate that, and we now have this permit, and it goes till 2028, so.
Great. Okay, any questions for anybody? Okay, since this is just an update, there's no vote needed. And how about the approval of the purchase orders? Do I hear a motion for that approval?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
And can you explain, Mr. General Manager?
Yes, ma'am. This purchase order is for a heavy-duty cab and chassis from Ray Varner, $64,000. It is, you want to speak to that, Todd? Any good stuff that you want to talk about?
No, this is actually for the Water and Sewer Department.
Right.
But it is, as you see there, we sent out bids to everybody in East Tennessee and Middle Tennessee and all the state, everybody on the state contract, and Ray Varner was the only one to bid on that, which is still surprising.
Which I think a lot of times they do that just because, you know, they're local. We've got a great relationship with them, and we appreciate the fact that they bid for that. I mean, I know we sent it out to, I think if we called somebody, we would get something, but it wouldn't be, it wouldn't make the same impact. And a lot of this isn't under some of the state contract that we
Correct.
have. So it all meets the purchasing requirements that we have. And we think it's a fair bid, or we wouldn't bring it to you. And our recommendation is the board approve this purchase order for $64,076 for this heavy-duty cab and chassis.
Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, all in favor of approving this purchase order, say aye. Aye. And that passes. And then we move on to the approval of these work orders. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
And Mr. General Manager, can you walk us through these?
Yes, ma'am. The first one for $99,000, it's a $90,000 contract that we have for water loss study. And this is a lot of money, especially in our water and sewer department, because this goes right to the bottom line. This is not a capital project. This is straight expense. And it's going to impact us, and we'll see that impact on our statements. Our concern is that our water losses are continuing to rise. And we have leaks. There is no question about it. Now, are there some areas where water is being diverted and not metered? We think that there may be some of that too. And we've got sectionalized equipment to where we're trying to run this thing down, and we're unsuccessful in doing a lot that makes an impact. And Greg has recommended, and I agree, that we have got to have a system-wide, all at once, let's get down to identify, because these listening devices that they use are top of the line, and what they'll do is they will find the leaks. They will be able to estimate the loss from that specific leak, and then we can prioritize our guys are going out there and fixing those leaks. And in the end, I mean, it's the right thing to do. It'll tighten the system up, and it'll also affect our line loss, which eventually, unattended, the state would say, "What are you doing?" You know, and at least this way we'll be able to say, you know, we are taking proactive action in order to professionally get a group in here that's going to identify, mark, and help us prioritize where we need our manpower to go fix these leaks. Any more on that, Greg?
No.
That was just an easy no.
Yeah.
Does it take a long time to do that? I mean,
To do the whole system, which we have about 148, 150 miles of pipe, it's going to take them approximately 30 days. to do that, you know, with scheduling and stuff, you know, with everything on.
I have to do it at night, some of that is late at night because of the traffic, you know. They hear the road, you know, trucks and things
Sub
like that.
out. We're gonna be subbing this out for somebody to,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the 90,000, and we've got a contingency in there, but we don't expect to use that. But
Yeah.
that's the number, and we've used these folks before,
Yeah.
but on a more limited basis, and been very satisfied with them. And the number is it's in range. It's just a lot of money.
So when will we do that? If we,
We'll do it before this fiscal year. This is not a budgetary item. We'll do it before the end of June.
okay,
You know, because if we're gonna take a hit, we're gonna take it all
Yeah.
in 1 year.
sure. Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's vote for these separate. The first work order for the water distribution system for 99,000. All in favor, say yes.
yes.
And that motion passes. And then that brings us to the next motion.
We've got the raw water intake. Greg, if you don't care, if you explain what we're trying to do there and the reasons for it.
Okay, our raw water intake, which pumps the water up to the water plant to treat it, out of the river. We have 4 pumps in there, and they rotate. You know, we have 2 pumps run continuously the whole time. We have 2 pumps within the rotation cycle. You have to have redundancy for TDEC. One of the pumps is no longer in use, is not serviceable. And we need to replace that pump so we can get back to our redundancy. And,
That was 1975. That pump was 1975, when I was 14.
Well, we got our money's worth out of that.
So that's what this work order is for, is to replace that one pump.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, all in favor of approving the pumps, say yes. Yes. And that motion also passes. Okay, so that brings us to the review of the capital outlay. Mr. General Manager?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We traditionally, especially for those that have not been through this process before, our budget is next month. And what we try to do is and that's why we call this preliminary. This is pretty much our list of what we anticipate we're going to be looking for in the budget that you're going to see. But we don't want to give that to you all at once because it's a lot to digest. And this way you really have a month to say, I'm not sure I understand this, and it'll give us an opportunity to discuss that. We always break with an open space. If you look down on electric, you start new services at 125, and you go down to general work orders, which is $1,250,000, and then a gap. Above that gap is pretty much standard stuff. It won't break out to a work order or a purchase order. Everything else essentially will do that. And we've had to raise that, the general work orders and plan additions, because Dudley, when he does, and he does have a tremendously good forecast on the budget, as determined, we needed to up that, and that was up significantly from last year. Wasn't that right, Doug?
Yes, it was. I mean, it's the cost of materials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they're twice, 3 times, 4 times what they were. So every little thing we do is a lot more than it used to be.
Everything below that space is specific. These are jobs that, and we, as we always do, we try to identify the conductor that needs to be replaced. That is an ongoing process to get the most needed one first. All of these things are in line to get done, other than our direct load control and our pole replacement program we'll be doing in-house. And if circumstances or time gets away from us, we'll be pushing some of this to the next budget if it's necessary. But this is what Todd's got lined up for our crews to do in this next fiscal year. And then we constantly upgrade our rolling fleet which is our service trucks, our pickup trucks, and you see, we've got, 2 bucket trucks down there. I mean, they're by themselves, $750,000, a lot. There's a lot of money associated with that. So that is the plan. And when we match this up, when Dudley gets done massaging the numbers, we'll match this up to what our anticipated revenues are, what our reserves are, and that lets us know what our potential capital requirements are for the next fiscal year. And then that helps us to determine, do we have sufficient reserves and net income? Are we anticipating sufficient dollars in order to make this happen? So then, if the answer to that's no, you either reduce what's on this capital project, or you adjust the rates, or you borrow the money, depending on how important it is to get this thing done. So that's why this may change. That's why we call it preliminary. But we'll be glad to answer any questions as you look down through electric before we go to water, if there's any specific questions that you have.
So what was the previous year spend, capital?
$7,870,000.
And then to your point about adjustment, so since we've had this tough year on the electric side, my assumption is we have not deferred any capital
Correct.
expenditures.
That's correct.
And the funding came from then, because
That-
it's not produced out of operation, so it came from.
It came from the reserves, that's right. Which is why, that's one of the, and if I didn't mention it, it's a point that I wrote down, diminishing what I see decreasing cash reserves. And I don't want to get in a situation where it impacts what we do.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I assume that we bid out the old vehicles when we replace them. Is that what we do?
We do, and we used to essentially give those away. At one time, we did to the city a lot until we found out we could go to jail for that, which stopped it immediately, by the way. Anybody watching, we don't and have not done. And then we auctioned them off, and we took bids locally, and we were getting $300 and $400 and $600 for these things. And then Dudley found what is that called?
Gov deals.
Gov deals.
Yeah.
Government deals. My goodness, don't listen to this if you're from Ohio, but them folks from Ohio drive down here and they're thrilled if it starts.
Yeah.
They are thrilled if it starts. You mean,
Easy, really.
it is
Yeah, for
amazing
some
what
of
we
those.
get for those. So yes,
Even we had a lawnmower. Somebody came from Alabama to get a lawnmower that the hydraulic system was out on.
Yeah.
It's gonna cost way more to fix the hydraulic system than the mower's worth. They came from Alabama, and we had to use a forklift to load it up for them.
it was great.
We sold a used bucket truck a few years ago to a potato farmer in Idaho.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's not like he drove it off.
I don't know.
So yes, the answer to your question is, yes, we get premium dollars for everything that we sell.
Okay.
These old ones. Yes,
That's a
thank you.
good steward of the money.
Yes, ma'am. In water, if you're ready to go on.
Hey, sure.
What has dominated the water department, as you say, and again, it's the same break between what you see at the top is fairly standard stuff, and then everything after that is specific, and all of that will be followed with a work order. But we always do galvanize until there is no more galvanize. We always, what I like to call a contribution. We make a contribution every year to removing galvanize out of our system. The big dogs in here are this Market Street, what they call Cityscape, and which is 1.7 million in the water and 1.25 in the sewer. That's all tied into what the city's going to do, and we found out today that the grant for that, the federal grant for that, has been approved, and that's $1,846,039. And apparently there is the city and county are going to add another 461,000 to that. So our exposure is somewhere in the $700,000 range, which we will be able to accommodate when that comes through. Everything else, there's a Miller Road force pump, which Greg has been trying to do for 2 years, $350,000, and essentially that is an extension, it's a widening of the force main, because apparently when it goes up the hill and then back down the hill, there's a point in there where it's not happy at all. We're working to fix that and those others. I think, what did you say, about 2,500 linear feet of that? So that's the 350. Everything else is service trucks and standard work at the wastewater treatment plant, and 7 basin at the water plant, 175,000. And this again is preliminary, but we anticipate that this especially will be pretty much fixed.
Any questions? Okay, since this is a review, it also doesn't take a vote, but Mr. General Manager, you want to go over the rest of the other business?
Yes, ma'am. On the 17th of April, this last month, we were happy that the state has recognized, and they sent us a letter. The Senate passed and the governor signed a bill that increased from $50,000, which is authorizing the general manager to approve for work orders and for purchase orders. They raised that from 50 to 100,000, recognizing that as long as I've been here, it's been, I think, 50,000. And now I told our chairman that I bought a house for $27,500 on Washington Avenue, which is really a nice house. You can't get that for that anymore. So the numbers have gone up, and even in today on our agenda, all 3 of what we had to address by board would have fallen under this 100,000. So it's essentially, the state says we can now approve up to $100,000 in order to minimize the board's involvement in these lower end purchase orders and work orders. So if the board agrees that that is a good idea, then and approves that, I'll make the changes into our policy to reflect, which now says 50, which will then say 100. So that's where we're at, and it's really your decision. I don't mind either way. It's just, to me, it just makes good sense. It's not like these are, if there's anything controversial, I don't care what it is, I would bring it to the board at what number that represented.
Is that something we can vote on tonight?
Yes,
or do you want
ma'am.
to bring that back?
If you're interested in doing that, and if not, we'll just let that thing fly
Well,
like it
I'll
is.
just invoke my ability to be able to make that recommendation, so aligning up with what our law has been changed to and what I feel like we need to do, I make that recommendation. Do I hear a second for that? Okay, any other questions or comments? Then all in favor of raising the limit from 50,000 to 100,000, say yes. Yes. And that passes.
Todd and I have spent time with the TVA board and with TVA this last month. What a joy it is to have a super brain with you right there. And he is every bit of that, and we appreciate that. We hosted, at TVA's request, what they call a coal retirement deep dive. If you remember, I've been very vocal about the decommissioning of the coal plants, fossil coal plants. in light especially of Storm Elliott, which took us into a rolling blackout. How can you decommission generation assets and get into a net loss in generation when you can't meet the requirements on a 6-degree day, do you say? So apparently we were so vocal in that, and so much support from the other LPCs, TVA sent their top folks out, including the manager of 3 of these coal-fired plants, in order to do a deep dive in understanding, because I told them we just cannot get our arms around the understanding of how you can retire these functional assets, and our fear is that you're bound to the political pressure for this is zero carbon emissions. So they came out Monday, it's Monday, doesn't matter, Monday or Tuesday, and they came from Kentucky, they were very interested. TVA brought the right people out in order to go through that. I see Bull Run as a bus that left the station, and that's due to get decommissioned this fall. And with several hours worth of discussion on that, we got into the granular reasons for why Bull Run specifically needed to get decommissioned, and we are in agreement with TVA that it does make good sense to do that. It's the oldest fossil fuel asset that they have on their system. It was designed to run almost all the time, and now it's running less than 80 days a year. And the cycle up and cycle down on that is a tremendous hit on the equipment itself. They're thinking $50 million just to keep that thing to where they can call on it 80 days a year. It just doesn't make sense. That's the last asset, base load that they would call to bring online because of the cost associated with that. It's the right thing to do. Now, the other plants are not in that, because Bull Run is the only plant designed like that. Everything else has a lot more flexibility, and we have convinced TVA to take another look. I called it stutter step. I used that word 14 times. Stutter step to decommissioning. They've got regulations and requirements coming in at 2028, and they're planning to decommission some starting next year. I say on those, you can stutter step to decommissioning even a year or two in order to get new generation assets online and generating. So you're not into a net loss. You're going to put, because their plan is to put gas turbines on, they're going to do all of that. All of that's great, but don't take these others off until you get those going. That's the whole thing. So now they've committed to take another look at that, and of course they're going to include us into that conversation. We've been very much involved in that. So we're very pleased with the way that discussion went, and I think going forward, I think it's going to be a very positive thing. Also, Todd and I went to the board meeting. They had the 90 year celebration for TVA, and they went to Norris because the Norris Dam was the first one coming in, and they had that at the middle school, their TVA board meeting. We were invited to their listening session, which I went to and had an opportunity to speak in behalf of the CEO, because he was maligned by a large number of folks represented there that were very much concerned about the environment, and they blamed a lot of what TVA was doing on the CEO, and I was able to speak because I know him personally. I spoke in his favor, which was great, and then we were invited to dinner afterwards, which sounds kind of cool, but they invited everyone but the lady that did the floors, which she did an excellent job, so it's really, it sounds, more impressive than it is. The only positive thing was we sat at the table where some of the TVA board members were. And that got us an opportunity, because they questioned, to share our story. And they were very, very impressed with that, and they needed to be. In the listening session, the head of TMEPA, Tennessee Municipal Electric, called CUB out by name as the one that was able to respond most vigorously to assist TVA during Storm Elliott. You know, and of course the question then becomes, why can't others do that? And we had the answers to that. So all of that's very good. There's a lot of talk with TVA, and they talk to us, Jeff Lash and the others, top management there, some kind of a collaboration effort in order for them to better understand what we do with our virtual power plant and how we can make that applicable to some of these other utilities. So we see that interest is now growing, and we will be very much a part, CUB alone will be very much a part of how we can help the valley of the other 152 move forward in that. So we'll bring more of that to you. I understand they're even talking to EPRI about that. So we'll look forward to that, and as we know more, we'll bring it to you. I think we're going to meet with some of the folks within the next month, which will be before our next board meeting, and so we'll know a lot more after that. So our budgets are next month. I've already told you about in that we're going to try to do a rate review to see what's necessary and any recommendations going forward. But we also got the word that the pandemic credit that we've been enjoying is the TVA staff is recommending to the TVA board that they're going to do away with that. And that's not good, because that affects right to our bottom line. That was about 1.5%. Remember what that in terms of dollars was, Dudley? Not to put you on the spot.
I think it's about the same as what we get in the
Partnership credit?
partnership credit, yeah, so it pretty much aligns with that, I think.
Yeah. So $1 million a year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're sorry to see that go. And of course, that's one of the factors that will play into this recognition of any rate adjustment or rate action that we're going to be asking the board for next month, because we only have till June 30th to run that by the TVA. TVA has to approve all of that, which they will, I'm certain, and we'll look to make a recommendation to you, and we'll have a lot more flesh to flesh that out for you. But that's all I have, Madam Chairman, unless someone has a question about any of that.
Any questions? I just want to say, you know, as I sit here and listen to what Dudley said and what you said, and I just want people that are listening to this meeting to realize that when it comes to weather and storms and pandemics and materials are double and triple than what they used to be, I mean, sometimes you have to look at rates and decide what we need to do, and it's a challenge, but we don't have control over some of that stuff that's out there. So I hope everybody understands that we're being as good of stewards as we possibly can with the monies that we've got, but sometimes you just have to
We would
look
be
at
derelict.
what we're doing.
If we didn't bring this to your attention.
Yeah,
And the reasons for it,
Yeah.
and we will show tremendous pressure on our reserves in these last few years that are essentially out of our control.
yeah,
You
it
know.
is. When you're dealing with things out of your control, you just
Right.
have to be the best stewards of what you can, as you can. So as we go into our next meeting, I just hope everybody out there in TV land kind of understands all the challenges that the board and utility companies deal
But
with.
this Storm Elliott, Madam Chairman, we suffered significantly, and TVA made a lot of money
Yeah.
because of the demand. We got hit with the demand charge, and $10.35 per KW.
Yeah.
The demand peaked during this time, and that's what we paid on peak. And There was no KWH to backfill that.
Yeah.
I think they made
150 million.
150 million, all on the backs of the LPCs, because we all lost
Yeah,
in that.
yeah, and that's what we're dealing with now, so.
Correct.
I hope everybody out there that's listening understands
As much as
that.
everybody
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's true. Everybody's facing challenges,
Right.
all the utility companies. Okay, do we want to talk about the meeting time for next month?
yes, ma'am, and I wrote that down and I ignored it. You know, next month, it comes early. I think it's the 8th of the month, if I'm not mistaken, for our board meeting. And we would like the board to consider moving that to the 15th, if that's not too much of an inconvenience.
What does your all schedule look like? We have two not here, but if we can get three on that, is that okay to move, Steve? Sure. Okay, so it looks like the three of us can move and.
That
will
would be
you-
great, that would help us a lot.
Okay, and will someone contact these two?
Oh,
like me
absolutely.
too, or- okay,
Absolutely.
okay. And then we'll just plan on meeting a week later.
A week
For
later.
next month.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Any other comments or
Ma'am.
information? Okay, then we will adjourn this meeting.